I wonder if you have told your story now a couple of times today,
Yes.
but I wonder if even just in brief, maybe we could start. You were a college student. Well, so maybe I know enough of your story. We can do this a little bit back and forth. You were a college student at UCLA,
Mhm.
and you did not grow up in a Buddhist home.
Mhm.
Okay, well, we don't have to do the yes or no. But getting us, and then and you did some really important travel after you graduated from college. Maybe you could tell them a bit about that.
Yeah, because when I graduated college, I was like done with school. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm glad I went and I learned a lot, but as I told another class, I was tired of telling professors what they already knew when I wrote papers and did exams. Yeah. And I wanted to learn from real live people and experience and be with them and, not just read a book about it. So I worked for a year and earned some money and then returned whatever I could return and took off. And so this was in the 70s, the early 70s. So we traveled in Western Europe and also Eastern Europe, which was Soviet at that time, and into North Africa, which was real exciting. That was quite interesting. And then in Israel, and then flew to Turkey and went overland to India and Nepal by bus and hitchhiking and however we could get there. And not many people did that at that time, but it was really fascinating. And, just going in the bazaar and getting our food. We had a little cooking stove with us and we cooked the food and in our own room or, went out to some common place to eat. And just wandered around and met people and talked to them. And so meeting people from many, many different cultures, and that was wonderful. And yeah, I'm very grateful for that. And even after becoming a nun, I've been able to travel a lot too, and I think it's a great education experience because you're there and you can ask people, what do you think and how does your country work and you learn from living people, yeah, which you also don't know many living people, do you? You know a lot of screens. Yeah, so tech, which was supposed to bring us closer, I think in many ways has made us much further apart. Yeah, you can watch a video or listen to a podcast about something, and you don't have to be in relationship with the person when you're doing that. Yeah, you can just lie back and, when it's interesting, sit up. When it's boring, go and get something to drink. Yeah. So you're not connecting with other people when you're looking at a screen. So, I lived with the dinosaurs. We didn't have screens, but yeah, but it's really worthwhile to talk to living beings. Yeah.
So when you got to Nepal, when you were tell us about your encounter with Buddhism in India.
Okay. Well, yeah, when we got to Nepal, Nepali culture is quite interesting because there's the Indian influence and then they have their own culture as well. The Newaris are Buddhist. Are any of you from India or Nepal? Which part of India? Oh, okay, in the south. Beautiful, huh? Yeah, yeah. So, when you travel, I mean, you see the different cultures and things like that. And India has really changed. If I talk about India now instead of Nepal, It's really changed since I was there. When I was there, the laws were quite strict. They didn't have so much, like, you couldn't import certain things because they wanted them to be made in India. That policy has changed now, and now India is really, involved in world commerce. But at that time, it was really poor. It still is poor, certain parts of it. You really see, I think the wealth now is even more than it was before. Now, if you go to India, you see high-rise apartments with, the guy who just got married, his son, and their house has 27 floors in it, complete with a bowling alley and a tennis court and a swimming pool, and the ceremonies for the wedding went on for I don't know how many months. And then right outside of that, you see slums, and people who have nothing, and there's no even of plumbing for what they live. So people are just peeing and pooping all over the place. And it's right next door to this fancy-dancy thing. So, you really see the contrast there.
It's a good thing that in this country there's no divide between rich and poor.
Oh, no, nothing at all. Yeah. Have any of you read the book Caste? Yeah. So she talks about caste in America. Yeah. So caste we usually associate with India. You're born into a certain caste, and that really influences, what you can do in life, what kind of education you get, and so forth. But we think in America, yeah, everybody's free, everybody's equal. But boy, we have our own caste system here. Yeah, and it's becoming more and more apparent in society. And the attitude of the wealthy people in this country towards the immigrants, how they are convincing the working class that the immigrants are their enemy, which is totally wrong. That is not, the immigrants. I'm going off on politics. You have to bear with me. But seriously, this country needs immigrants of all sorts, wealthy, poor, doesn't matter, but especially the people who have been crossing the border illegally. They're doing the same thing that my grandparents did when they came over. My grandparents were poor. My grandma worked in the sweatshops in New York. My grandpa hung wallpaper. They lived at the bottom of the thing, and then the Depression hit. But, especially during COVID, you may not understand, or you may not have experienced it, but it was the immigrants, especially the poor ones who took any job they could possibly get, were really helping to keep the country going. They were the ones who stocked the grocery stores, who worked in public service things, in the homes where, people, the old age homes, and house care, health care, the jobs that put them right in front of people who were ill with COVID. Yeah. And then I grew up in California, and so migrant workers, were the ones, and still are, the ones who pick the fruit, pick the vegetables, harvest so many of the crops. And, we just go to the grocery store, you buy something in a plastic bag, but you forget, or you don't even know to start with, how did, those grapes get there? Where did they come from? The flour that you make your bread with, or you buy your bread, where did that come from? and how many people were involved in making it and growing the crops and transporting it. You know, and in the same way that this country very much was built on slave labor and people being taken advantage of in that way. But so often you dismiss that, and we just believe what is here right now and think, oh, yes, of course, I deserve this. But when I was a kid, and I think this kind of thinking when I was a kid, was one of the things that made me explore life, was I was quite aware, for whatever reason, probably because of television, that I had a life that most people on this planet didn't have. Yeah, and I had food, I had a shelter, medicine, I had an education. And I was able to have that because my grandparents came from Eastern Europe and Poland and Russia and Ukraine, came over in boats, didn't know the language, and somehow made a life here. Yeah, so I have that because of their hard work, because of the hard work of so many people. All of our ancestors who lived in here before. And then I just kind of come along and, born in 1950, after, I know that's with the dinosaurs, but it was, the World War was over, so everybody was happy. It was a time of prosperity. And, you're a little kid and it's like, oh, I like all these things, and plus I want this, and I want this, and I want this. And, when your parents are the generation who made it in America, they got the American dream. Yeah, so grandparents, immigrants, my parents made it. My dad went to college, of course, the first one in his family to do that. And then I come along in a time of prosperity, and I just took everything for granted, except when I saw on TV, these programs about how other people lived. And then I was going, whoa, this is not fair. Yeah, even though I have more than most people do, being middle class, still it's not fair. Because when I was taught in school, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, everybody's equal, I really believed that, and it wasn't until I became an adult that I realized, to tell you the truth, that the history books lied. Yeah, and that many of my teachers, it's, I don't think people deliberately lied, but they just saw things in an incredibly narrow way, very, very narrow. And it was only in the last, I would say, 20, 30 years that much of our history happened to come out where people really started learning what went on in America and why was the country so successful economically. So, yeah.
So no, this is great. So religion didn't hit for you growing up, but
No.
But there was something different about Buddhist teachers when you first encountered them. What was it that was different about them that connected with you?
They weren't telling me the truth with a capital T. Like most other people, most other adults I met, everybody had the truth. Capitalism is the truth. No, socialism is the truth. You've got to be Christian. If you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to hell. Everybody had some kind of truth, and they said that everybody who didn't believe that was wrong. It was really difficult to have Diversity, I know that's the swear word in America now, but I really believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yeah, don't tell the White House. They'll kick me out of the country, just for what I believe. But, you know, I learned the values that this country was founded on, and I thought that's wonderful. And as a kid, you know, I didn't see the inequality. But once I started seeing it, it really hit strong, and just the feeling of this is not fair, you know, and that I should not take for granted everything I have.
So those truth claims suddenly looked like they weren't absolute, and you had Buddhist teachers who said, "Don't take it on. Don't take it because we said it's true.
Yeah.
Don't take it as true because we say it's true.
Yeah.
Test it, try it out.
Yeah, experience it, yeah, and see what you think." And I like that approach, you know, because I was taught freedom of thinking in this country, freedom of speech. And I believed it until certain people got elected. And, you know, and now we have to be very careful with what we say and what we think. But, you know, the teachers that I met said, yeah, test it, see if it makes sense. Is it logical? Yeah. And this was always my problem with theistic religions. Yeah. I couldn't understand. You know, I was taught God created the world. And so my question was, well, who created God? Well, no, God was always there. No, that couldn't be, because everything else is created, so something must have come before God. What was it? It's time for a tea break. You know, I was taught when I asked questions like, why did God create people? Well, he was lonely. Wait a minute, I was told God was perfect. You know, how come he's lonely? And then I would ask, why did God create suffering? And, you know, the thing I always got was, don't ask certain questions. You're not allowed to ask those questions because the people in charge do not know how to answer them. And they cannot say, I don't know. Yeah? So they make something up that maybe makes sense to them. So I know for many people believing in a creator God and so on, it helps them in their life. That makes sense to them. That's fine with me, you know? That's okay. I'm not going to tell them that they're going to go to Buddhist hell if they aren't Buddhist. Okay, yeah. And I think whatever religion, you know, there's so many things in common between people of different faiths that if you look at, you know, there's a lot of room for cooperation and conversation and learning from each other. So I'm quite interested in interfaith dialogue, and I've done a bit of it. But I just know for myself, that kind of approach never made any sense. Whereas when my teachers taught, you know, because my big question was, why am I alive? And what's the purpose of my life? You know? And, you know, from my parents, what's the purpose of my life? Get married, have a good career, make a lot of money, have kids. And that, because that's what they did, that's what brought them happiness. But it wasn't very interesting to me to do that. Yeah, I really wanted to learn about life and not just go on, you know, vacations where you go to another country, but you eat at five-star hotels. I wanted to eat what the people ate, yeah? So, so I had this kind of questioning going on as I was growing up. And the Buddhist philosophy, I had time to think, I had space to question, and I asked a lot of questions. And so what I heard really rang true with me. Also, not just the story, kind of why are we alive, not just that part, but all the talk about compassion, and working for the benefit of others. Because, all religions teach, what is it, treat thy neighbor as thyself, that kind of thing, except, and look what's happening right now in the country with treat thy neighbor as thyself. Well, the ones that you're leaving.
We have rehearsal.
Okay, have a good rehearsal. I'd like to see are you singing or dancing or what?
We're playing instruments.
Oh.
We're in the band.
Okay, I was in band in high school. Yeah. What do you play?
I play the euphonium.
Uh-huh. Oh, marching band?
Sitting band. Sitting band.
Sitting band.
Concert.
Oh, but it's so much fun carrying a tuba down the street. Okay, have a good rehearsal.
Why? So you just came to a really important topic, which is the topic of compassion.
Yes.
And I wonder if you would tell us. I know this is a crazy question to ask. Maybe it's an unfair question, but what exactly is compassion?
Okay, so it has a very simple definition. Yeah, compassion is the wish for them to be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. Okay, so some people in this country think compassion means just being a doormat. Yeah, you have so much compassion that whatever anybody wants, you give to them. Regardless. You see somebody on drugs in the street, and they need to score something, so you help them out. To me, that's not compassion. If I want to help somebody who's strung out on drugs, I'm going to see if I can get them into some kind of rehab program. Okay? So sometimes they use the expression tough love. Not tough, but compassion and love look in the long term. What is good for somebody, not in the short term. In the short term, somebody, needs some money to go score some drugs. In the long term, that's going to make them miserable. Yeah, in the long term, they need help dealing with whatever was getting them involved in the drugs. So it's a way of looking, people are unhappy and they're miserable, but what is the real cause of the misery? Yeah, and then wanting to help them, helping people be free of, whatever misery they have now, not enough food, clothing, shelter, medicine, but what is the long term? Yeah, because the fact of the matter is that as long as we have a body like this, we're going to get old and sick and die. So I hate to break that news to you. Yeah, I think you know it already, but we know it here. And you know what? It always happens to old people. It's not going to happen to us. Yeah? Isn't it? It's not something that happened to me. I'm not going to get in a car accident. Yeah, until you do. Or I'm not going to, get cancer at age 40 or even at age 10. We always think this happens to other people. But the thing is, as long as we have a body like this, we are susceptible to all of that. Yeah. Also, as long as we have a mind that is under the control of ignorance, clinging, attachment, and anger, we're going to have problems. Okay? You're kind of looking, wow, what kind of problems? First of all, okay, anger. Anybody happy here when they're angry? Anybody happy when you're angry? No. Okay. When you're angry, do you justify your anger? That my anger is good because those people did something wrong that was bad, that harmed me or harmed the people I care about. So I should be angry and tell those people they should not act like that. They have to change. And if they don't change when I tell them, well, you call out the military. Yeah? Does that solve anything? Yeah. Has anger ever solved anything? So when we really look, we justify our anger. And we even justify being angry at the system that keeps people down. Righteous anger, righteous anger, yeah. But that's anger. And how we define anger in Buddhism is it's, an emotion or an attitude, a perspective that is based on exaggerating the negative qualities of someone or something, or projecting negative qualities onto someone and something. And then we can't stand it. This person has negative qualities. This action that they're doing is terrible. This possession is like horrible. And, what do we have to do? We have to attack it or we have to get away from it. So fight or flight. Yeah? And then we think, oh, anger protects me. Yeah, if somebody harms me, I fight them back. No, either fist fight or attack them verbally. But the thing is, it never solves the problem. You may dominate somebody because you have a bigger mouth and you scream louder and you intimidate them, or because you're stronger and you physically overpower them. So they may do what you want, but they aren't happy. And they also won't respect you. Yeah, we think that if we can make other people afraid of us, then it means they respect us. So if we can be the dominant ones and overpower others, doesn't matter if they're angry. Now they respect me because I have more power. Actually, just taking a survey here, do you respect people who dominate you and control your life? Anybody here? No. You're miserable. Yeah. So the thing with anger is, when we're angry, what we're really trying to say, especially with people we know, is, I want to feel close to you, but right now I don't. Yeah, but I think somehow by being angry and telling you everything that you're doing wrong that's preventing me from feeling close to you, that then you will change and then I'll feel close to you. But Yeah, when you've had fights with people, do you feel close afterwards? No. Okay. So, anger is something in a society they say is good, but when you really question, is that a helpful emotion? Yeah, if what I want is actually to feel in harmony with others, does anger help me achieve that? No. Okay. Then you think, oh, well, that means I'm compassionate, so I just let them do whatever they want to do, and I go along with it. No, that's not the antidote to anger, and that's not wisdom. Sometimes people are doing harmful things, and you have to do what you can to intervene, but you try to do it out of compassion, not out of anger. Okay, let me give you an example. Somebody told me this story. So it was a single mom, and they had a son who was, he must have been high school, kind of just graduated high school, late teens, early 20s. And he was under 18, yeah. He was under 18 because he got in trouble. He got arrested, and she would have to go to juvenile court to get him out. She loved her kid, every mother loves their kids. You may not believe it, but parents actually love you, but they're trying to do what's good. So he would get in trouble. She would go down, bail him out, pay whatever fine it was, whatever, she had to do, bring him home. Then he'd go out and he'd do some other thing that got him arrested and in trouble. And she'd go and bail him out again. So this happened many times. And then at one time it happened, he's in juvenile court, and she says to the judge in juvie, Judge, I don't know what to do with him anymore. You keep him. I'm not taking him home this time because I don't know what to do with him. So he was in juvie for a while. Yeah, juvenile hall. Not fun being locked up. And he thought at that time when he was in juvie, he began to think about, how did I get myself here? What was I doing? And that helped him to see, oh, I got here because of my actions. It's not that other people are mean and arresting me. I was doing things that were harmful, that were illegal. Yeah, so I'm the one responsible for my situation. And so that was a big turning point for him. And I think, his mother had compassion at that point when she said to the judge, keep him, because she was really hoping that the experience would wake him up somehow, and it did. Okay? So being compassionate does not contradict holding people accountable. Yeah? We usually think holding people accountable is, you're going to get punished. No. Punishment, again, how well does punishment work? Maybe if you're a little kid, it works a little bit, but it doesn't work in the long term, because nobody likes being overpowered. Nobody likes being punished. Yeah? So you may stop doing something to avoid the punishment, but what we want people to do is grow in their wisdom so that they stop doing harmful actions, first of all, because they respect themselves and they have some standards that they want to live by. And second of all, because they realize that when they do certain actions, it harms other people. And they begin to see, oh, my actions matter. What I do matters. It affects the life of other people. Yeah, and then that's a kind of wisdom that you gain. And then you see what you do and you say, oh, I'm doing that and that harms that person, and I'm doing this, I'm lying to this person and that's breaking the trust there, and I'm cheating that person, which breaks the trust there. And, we begin to question ourselves and see, oh, we hold ourselves accountable because we have standards, and one of our standards is not to harm others, and to benefit them as much as we can. Yeah? So compassion works at things in this way. You know that you're a parent, yeah? If you said yes to everything your kids want, would they grow up to be good people in society? No, they'd grow up to be brats. Yeah? So even though when we're kids, we're stomp our feet and say, I want this, I want that. Yeah, and our parents have to say, no, we can't afford it, or, you don't need it, or whatever. And we don't like that. But they're doing out of compassion for us. Yeah, because they want us to grow up and, be responsible adults instead of little brats all the time.
Thank you. I want to give folks here an opportunity to ask a question or.
You were describing anger at oppressive systems, and you used the term righteous anger, but you went on to say that was still anger and thus not the right thing to feel.
Yeah.
What would you say is the right thing to feel?
Okay. So I'm going to tell you another story of how I figured that out. So I grew up during the Vietnam War, like I told you, and I was very anti-war. I didn't see any purpose for the war at all. It wasn't benefiting our country. It wasn't benefiting Vietnam. I didn't see any purpose. So I was doing demonstrations. I was at UCLA at the time, and one day we were down, it was a big field. We were protesting. The cops were on the other side. Cops was how we referred to them when we were polite. We used to call them pigs. Okay, not very polite, not very appreciative of what they do. But anyway, they were all lined up with their riot gear there, and then we were here. And, people were shouting things. And the guy standing next to me picked up a brick or a stone and threw it at the cops. And I went, oh. That's not the right response. Yeah? That's not the right response. Because he was clearly angry. Yeah, he was angry. The cops were angry. Yeah. How much difference was there in their mental states? Not much. Yeah. This side was mad at that side was mad at that side. Everybody was under the sway of anger. And, to harm somebody, to make this whole situation devolve into a physical confrontation, what purpose? So that's when I thought, righteous anger, when you wind up swearing at people, calling people names, throwing things, it doesn't work. So the Tibetan situation, okay? I don't know how many of you know where Tibet is? Okay. So some people in this country don't know. Yeah, you know where Mount Everest is. Half of it is in Tibet, half of it is in Nepal. The Tibetans had their own country. When China took over, when the communists took over China, in Chinese history, they view the Tibetans as one of the 5 peoples of the central land, meaning China. The Tibetans did not see themselves that way. So the communists, started marching into Tibet to occupy it and bring it home to the motherland. The Tibetans did not want that. They have their own culture, own language, everything like that. They didn't want that. So this is 1959, yeah? And the communists started to encroach in eastern Tibet even earlier, like 1949, 1950, okay? The Palestinian situation was also flaring up around that time, yeah? Israel gained independence, 48, 49? It was the Nakba for the Palestinians, so they lost some of their land. The Tibetans lost their land. Yeah, both peoples want freedom. Yeah. How did the Palestinians go about it? Under Yasser Arafat, then they hijacked planes. Okay, they took hostages. They killed people. You can see what Hamas has been up to, so much so that they didn't even care about their own people. Hamas knew that Israel was going to attack back. But so many people, when you look at the Palestinian struggle, do they have their freedom? No. Okay? But many people have died, yeah, in the quest for Palestinians to have their own country. The Tibetans, okay, they're Buddhist. Buddhists value pacifism, they value compassion. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, until about 11, 12 years ago, he was also the political head. He resigned from that, but he's definitely the spiritual head of Tibet, and their country was taken over. There was an abortive uprising. Tens of thousands of Tibetans fled over the Himalayas. At the end of winter, it was freezing, and they became refugees in India. Many of them died because Tibet has a cold climate, not many bacteria and environment, and viruses. You go into India, lots of bacteria and viruses. Many of them died. Okay? His Holiness was constantly telling the Tibetans, do not hate the Chinese communists. Yeah? The young people sometimes would get really restless, and His Holiness would say, no, do not be violent. Yeah? And even one time, I heard him say this with my own ears many times, okay? But some years back, there were a few Tibetans who self-immolated in Tibet, out of protest of what was happening to their people. And so one Tibetan man, went to Delhi and he self-immolated. And, for the common Tibetans, they saw him as a hero in the sense that he sacrificed his life for the cause of Tibet. Did it bring about Tibetan freedom? No. Yeah. And His Holiness Dalai Lama said, better you live for Tibet than die for Tibet. And if you look at how many people have died in the Tibetan quest for freedom and compare that to the Palestinian quest, huge difference in numbers. Huge. Yeah, and this is because of the Buddhist teachings on compassion and seeing that even righteous compassion, righteous anger is still, it doesn't work. Okay. In Buddhism, we also see attachment, or craving as an afflictive emotion, And so just as anger was based on a distorted perception, projecting negativity or exaggerating negativity, craving attachment is based on projecting wonder and beauty or exaggerating the beauty or wonder of some person or object or event. Yeah, and that is again based on projection, based on exaggeration. Then we do all sorts of things to get what we want. Yeah, we do it as individuals, we do it as countries. Now America wants Greenland, and we want Panama, and Canada. Yes, Canada's going to be, he's Canadian, is going to be our 51st state. And then, the White House will want that and this and the other thing. And what about the people living in those places? Is there any mention of them and their welfare and their happiness? No, it's just we want power. We don't have enough power as a country. We're the one superpower, and we're in the process of self-destruction, I think. So, this kind of attitude of I want what I want when I want it. Yeah, if you look carefully, this is American attitude, and this is what we're taught. After 9/11, do any of you remember 9/11? 3 people. Okay, 4 people. Yeah, the rest of you were, okay. After 9/11, it was traumatic for the country. The 2 towers fell down, the Pentagon, got smashed. 3,000 people were killed. People were hurt, people were angry. What did your Yale graduate, who was president at the time, am I insulting you? It's just true, yeah? What did your Yale graduate tell us? People are hurt, they're upset, they're angry. Yeah, we were told by the president to be angry and to go shopping. Why? Because if you go shopping, it is good for the economy. Yeah, he didn't say if you go shopping, you're using up more than your fair share of the world's resources. He didn't say that. But we were told, be a patriotic American and go buy stuff. Yeah? Does attachment bring happiness? I want what I want when I want it, and you got to give it to me. I deserve it. I am entitled. Why am I entitled? Because I am me. Yeah, and then you get into identity politics, yeah, which we all know about. Yeah, and instead of seeing ourselves as one big community of human beings or one big community of life, let's include the animals and then the non-human forms. Yeah? Do we see ourselves as a community of life? Do we help everybody who's just trying to stay alive and be happy? No. We want people who look like me. I want people who look like me. I see myself in the mirror every day. I don't need more people who look like me. Yeah? I need people who I can learn from, who very often are people who are different than me. Okay? So, breaking down into groups, and then, of course, our groups are rival, aren't they? Yeah? That book, Caste, I really recommend it for people to read that. It's really quite good. Yeah? So, in Buddhism, what we point out, what is so damaging to our happiness now and in the future? Greed, yeah? Well, then people say, but what's wrong with getting what I want? Well, how do you get what you want? Yeah? Do you treat other people fairly? Do you overcharge customers? Do you just take something from the store because you want it? Or you're working for a company and they should really have given you a promotion with a salary increase, but they didn't. So what do? You use the company credit card to take your family out to dinner. You take office supplies from the company home with you. You do all sorts of other things, so that the company's paying for, that you're actually stealing, because these things were not freely offered. But it's because of greed. I want what I want, and I want more money, and they're not giving me more money, so I'll just take some of their stuff. Okay. Anger, we can see the problem with that in society too. So when the Buddha, when we talked about love and compassion, not just wanting happiness and not just wanting people to suffer, but wanting them to have happiness and their causes, then we have to ask ourselves, well, when we encourage other people to be greedy, and to lie, oh my goodness, how much we lie in this country to get what we want. Yeah. When we encourage that, yeah, we're encouraging people to create negative actions to harm others, yeah, for their own benefit. And that doesn't work now, and from a Buddhist perspective, it doesn't create good karma. Karma just means actions. The actions leave like an energy trace on our mind stream that influences what we become and what we experience in our future lives. When we harm other living beings, either through, let's say, greed or anger, yeah, or jealousy or arrogance or whatever, we are not just harming others now, but we are planting the seeds for ourselves to experience suffering in future lives. Yeah, when you harm others, you're harming yourself. Karmically, and even in this life, because if we don't treat other people well, how are they going to treat us? Why are there uprisings when people are poor? Because they're not being, they're being mistreated. And, people who are unhappy don't just stay there quietly. There's uprisings, there's, strife in society, there's conflict. Yeah? So just, following our attachment and our greed, following our anger, our jealousy, our arrogance, it doesn't lead to happiness now, and it doesn't lead to happiness in the future. Yeah. let me give you another example. I have lots of stories, you know. This is one advantage of getting old. You collect a lot of stories, and they're good stories. Okay, so I lived in Seattle for some time, and at one point, there was a ballot initiative to raise property taxes because the schools needed better facilities. Okay, so raise taxes and then give the money so that the kids can have a better education. They can have after-school activities, you know, sports and crafts and things like that. Because now, you know, both mothers and fathers were working, and they would, you know, otherwise they would be home alone. And what do young kids do, or high school kids, you were all, you know, what do you do after school when there's no after school activities? What do you do in school? You know, you ditch school, you explore drugs, you know, get into trouble. So what was interesting when they're trying to raise taxes is the wealthy people did not want their property taxes raised. Yeah, they said, you know, the money is going to schools. It's going to the schools of poor people. I don't owe them anything. Why should I give my money to people who are poor for their kids? Not my kids. I don't really care about them. They didn't want to vote for the property taxes. What do kids do after school when both mom and dad are working and there's no crafts and there's no sports? Yeah, they get into trouble, especially when you start experimenting with drugs. Okay, then you need money. How are you going to get the money? Whose houses are you going to break into to get money? Whose cars are you going to break into to get the money? You know, because you need a new football, you need a new basketball, you need a joint. You know, it's whose houses? The houses of the rich people. Yeah, if the rich people had had a big mind and given some of their money to help the school system for the other kids, the kids wouldn't be breaking into houses and stealing cars. So the thing is, you know, when you harm others, it harms you karmically for your future, and it harms you now. Yeah, because people who we exploit are not happy, and they're not going to sit there and say, oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah? So this is why the Dalai Lama always says, if you want to work for, he says, if you want to be selfish and just care for what's good for you, the way to do it is to be kind to other people. Because if you're kind to other people, you will live with people who are happy. People who are happy are peaceful. There's harmony. Yeah? If you don't treat people well, you're going to live with people who are unhappy, and they're going to make their unhappiness known to you.